Hello. You have audio? Okay. Hello. The Chris Watts triple homicide case. A mother and her 2 young daughters end up dead, and the husband is left holding the figurative knife. There was no trial because the father pleaded guilty to all charges. We are here today to begin a mock trial. The purpose of this mock trial is to use the truth-finding techniques used by courts to find the truth. My name is Jordan Henshaw. I am playing the role of the defendant's legal counsel in this mock trial. This is my opening statement. Because of all the theories on the internet, it is difficult to identify what this trial is truly about. Some will say it is about why the defendant, Mr. Watts, committed various crimes. Some will say it is about how Mr. Watts could commit various crimes with help or without help. Others will say it is about when he committed the crimes, while still others will say it is about where he committed the crimes. I am here today, however, to tell you that the most important question of this case is not why, how, when, or where, but who. The question that should be asked of this case before any others is who killed Bella Watts? Who killed Cece Watts? Many will say this question does not need to be asked. They will say that because the who is far too obvious. I disagree. I disagree because it is the fundamental duty of a court to determine, not by the public's assumption, but by a fair and thorough trial, the who, what, when, where, and how of a crime. 2 fully capable adults were in the house the morning the 2 girls were killed. Not 1 fully capable adult, but 2. Both were physically capable of killing these little girls. It is the duty of this court to determine whether it is reasonable to doubt Chris Watts was their killer. The state will argue that there is no work to be done here. The state will tell you that Chris's behavior in prison confession after the fact, his manner of disposal, or hiding the bodies, and discrepancies in his first confession vanquish all reasonable doubt as to this matter. But I assure you, there is plenty more to learn than just that. For example, throughout this trial, we will learn about how Shanann said she was feeling the night of these murders. We will learn about her rage, about her need for control, and about her extreme anxiety and panic towards the thought of Chris leaving her. We will learn how concerned her friends were about her emotional state just hours before her children were smothered in their beds. We will then learn about the relationship between maternal love and maternal filicide, the killing of children by their mothers. We will review photographic evidence that suggests Shanann premeditated the murders of her children. We may hear from a Colorado Child Protection Services worker who will tell us what key phrases can be cause to forcibly separate a parent from their child for the child's safety. We will review text messages sent by Shanann that closely resemble those key phrases. We will then learn about the prevalence and traits of limerence, or infatuation, and limerent affairs. We will then learn how feelings of guilt can influence willingness to stand trial. We will then also learn how post-traumatic stress can cause a person to avoid standing trial, a trial that concerns an intensely traumatic event. We will finally, at the end, learn about the order of agreed-upon events that occurred the morning of August 13th. We will observe how Chris Watts' only legal confession was found to be truthful about all verifiable facts that it claimed. We will observe indicators in his behavior during this confession that indicate emotions such as sincerity, horror, shame, guilt, and emotional catharsis, or the sudden release of intense pent-up emotions. To conclude, we will explore the concepts of subclinical dissociation and depersonalization as they relate to responses to traumatic events. The prosecution in this trial will tell you that it is morally reprehensible to suggest Shanann's liability for any crime in this case. They will tell you that there is no evidence that she killed anyone, and that the entire idea is beyond absurd. But they will not be able to provide a single good reason as to why. They will tell you that it is unreasonable to doubt that Chris used familicide as a convenient replacement for divorce, However, they will not be able to point to any pattern in Chris's behavior before this incident that would suggest he had the propensity to commit such a crime. Actually, they won't be able to point to anything notable in his past that suggests any serious potential for any criminality whatsoever. But they will brush aside these petty inconveniences under the rug of Chris's evilness. If his actions don't make sense to us, as they allege, that is because he is far too evil to understand. It's not because their assumptions are incorrect. It is because Chris is just so evil. Throughout the course of this trial, I intend to persuade you into believing that it is reasonable to doubt that the defendant murdered both his baby girls, that he premeditated these actions, that he intended to kill them, and that he knew his actions were almost certain to cause death. That is what the law requires. The burden of proof lies on the prosecution. If, by the end of this trial, you do not believe they have proved those assertions beyond reasonable doubt, you are required by law to find the defendant not guilty. Furthermore, the prosecution in this trial has chosen to charge this defendant with a count of unlawful termination of pregnancy in the first degree. For you to find the defendant guilty of this charge, you must conclude that the prosecution has proved beyond reasonable doubt that this defendant physically removed a fetus from Shanann Watts' uterus, that he specifically intended to do so, and that Shanann Watts died as a result of the unlawful termination of pregnancy. That is the charge the prosecution chose to file. This trial is not about why Mr. Watts killed everyone, where Mr. Watts killed everyone, or how Mr. Watts killed everyone. It is about who killed who and why. Who killed these baby girls? An evil father who wanted an easy way out of divorce, or a somewhat understandable mother who was being tortured? All I must do by the end of this is show that it is reasonable to suspect it was the mother. Either a father caught his wife committing an unthinkable atrocity against his innocent baby girls, and he instinctively reacted in biological retribution, and then acted guilty because he indeed felt immensely guilty and traumatized by what he had done. Or this father callously and maliciously murdered all of them out of mere convenience. If Mrs. Watts killed the girls, Mr. Watts deserves a relatively minor sentence for how he hid the bodies. He deserves grief counseling for suddenly losing his 2 baby girls overnight, and he perhaps even deserves a hug. On the other hand, if Mr. Watts killed the girls, he deserves to spend the rest of his life in a cold, dark prison cell without any hope for a warm meal on Christmas. The only difference between these two fates is the truth. Who killed the girls? We can never know for certain who it was because we didn't get to interrogate the mother. We didn't get to analyze her nonverbal body language. We didn't get to pick apart how she explained the disappearances. We didn't get to watch her interrogation video. We didn't get to see her polygraph results. We didn't get to see if she would do media interviews. We didn't get to see her text messages about the murders. We didn't get to see how she would hide the bodies. We didn't get to judge her demeanor in court. None of these opportunities for suspicion ever even existed. Shanann will never have to face a police interview like every adult in the case did. She was the only adult in the case who didn't have to do a police interview. They interviewed everyone, but they couldn't interview Shanann. Shanann will never have to answer for why her 2 girls suddenly disappeared only hours after she arrived home from her weekend trip, where she was described by her friends as being emotionally sick. Shanann will never have to account for what she did that night like Chris did. Shanann will never have to face cameras like Chris did. Shanann will never have to face the threat of a death penalty like Chris did. We will never learn anything from asking Mrs. Watts questions. She escaped all this scrutiny. We can't forget that. This missing puzzle piece is one of the most important aspects of this case. There were 2 adults in the house that night. This is a whodunit case, not a why-did-he-do-it case, as the prosecution would have you believe. Who killed Bella and Cece? And can we be certain beyond reasonable doubt of either answer? I believe you will find the answer is unequivocally no. We cannot be certain beyond reasonable doubt. The defendant must be found not guilty. We don't know who killed the girls. We don't know. Not for sure. And that is all I have to prove. Thank you.